Have you ever walked away from someone feeling completely drained, even though they never raised their voice or said anything obviously cruel? You can't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something was off, but you couldn't name what had just happened to you. Here's the truth nobody wants to admit. The greatest threats to your peace don't announce themselves. They don't wear black hats or twirl mustaches. They wear smiles. They speak in concerned tones. They offer help while slowly poisoning your well-being. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to recognize these hidden enemies using wisdom that's protected minds for over 2,000 years. By the end of this video, you'll never be caught off guard again. You'll see the patterns, understand the tactics, and most importantly, you'll know how to protect yourself. Because your peace of mind is under attack. And it's time you learned how to defend it. Part 1. Invisible warfare. How they assault your reality. The most sophisticated predators don't attack your body, they attack your mind. They wage invisible warfare against your perception, your confidence, your ability to trust your own judgment. Let me show you their 3 primary weapons. Weapon number 1. Reality becomes negotiable. Sarah never yelled at me, never threatened me, never did anything HR would care about. But after 6 months of working with her, I was questioning my own sanity. I'm just trying to help you understand how others might perceive your presentation, she'd say, after systematically undermining every point I'd made in the meeting. Suddenly, my confidence became arrogance. My preparation became over-eagerness. My success became luck that wouldn't last. This is manipulation in its purest form, not demanding something from you, but reshaping reality itself until you're living in their version of the world. The test is simple. Does this person's help consistently leave you feeling worse about yourself? Real guidance illuminates your path forward. Manipulation obscures it while claiming to hold the only flashlight. But reality distortion is just the beginning, because once they've shaken your confidence in your own perceptions, they can deploy an even more dangerous weapon. Weapon number 2, charm as a precision instrument. I learned about weaponized charm through Marcus, not the emperor, but a guy in college who seemed too perfect. He remembered everyone's birthday, always had the right compliment. Could make you laugh on your worst days. Everyone loved Marcus, everyone trusted Marcus, everyone wanted to be around Marcus. That should have been the first warning sign. See, Marcus made each person feel like his closest confidant. He'd share just enough vulnerability to create intimacy, just enough secrets to make you feel special. But the moment you couldn't offer him something, social status, romantic access, career advancement, the charm vanished like morning mist. Here's the crucial difference. Real charm flows from genuine security and extends to everyone. Weaponized charm is deployed strategically, only where it can yield returns. The test: watch how they treat people who have nothing to offer them, the waiter doing their job, the elderly person moving slowly in line, the colleague going through a rough patch. Now, you might think these people sound obvious once you know what to look for. That's exactly what makes the 3rd weapon so insidious. Weapon number 3, lies that feel like truth. Some people lie as naturally as they breathe and with as little moral weight. David, my former business partner, could spin elaborate tales of incredible success and high-profile connections. The stories were detailed, consistent, and completely fabricated. When ventures failed, it was never his fault. When confronted with contradictions, he didn't get defensive. He simply created new lies to explain the old ones. What struck me wasn't the audacity, but the effortlessness. There was no struggle, no visible internal conflict. For David, lying wasn't a moral choice. It was simply the most convenient tool for any given moment. Marcus Aurelius taught that truth and righteousness are the foundations of all good. Those who lie without conscience have abandoned these foundations entirely. They've decided that reality is negotiable, and your right to make informed decisions matters less than their immediate desires. The pattern to watch: truth has simplicity and natural coherence. It doesn't need elaborate maintenance. Lies require constant revision, like a spider endlessly repairing its web. But here's where invisible warfare becomes truly devastating. Because once you're caught in a web of distorted reality, weaponized charm, and effortless lies, you become vulnerable to predators who don't just want to confuse you, they want to consume you. Part 2. Emotional predators. When empathy dies and control lives, the weapons we just discussed soften the target. But emotional predators go deeper. They don't just want to confuse you, they want to own you. And they do it by exploiting the very thing that makes us most human: our capacity for emotional connection. The empathy desert. True empathy is the ability to imaginatively enter another person's experience. It's one of humanity's most beautiful characteristics, and its absence is one of the most chilling things you'll encounter. I discovered this through Jennifer. I had just received devastating news about my father's illness. I was struggling to hold myself together while sharing this with her. Jennifer listened to my explanation of the diagnosis, my fears about treatment, my guilt about living so far away. When I finished, there was a brief pause. Then she said, "That reminds me, did I tell you about the amazing restaurant I went to last weekend?" It wasn't cruelty exactly. She didn't mock my pain. She simply moved on, as if I'd been discussing the weather rather than one of the most frightening moments of my life. But here's what's particularly insidious. This emotional detachment often masquerades as strength, rationality, superior emotional control. Jennifer would describe herself as someone who doesn't get caught up in drama. The difference is crucial. Emotional regulation means you can feel someone's pain without being overwhelmed by it. Emotional absence means you don't experience their pain at all. Seneca understood our fundamentally social nature when he wrote, "We are born to work together." This collaboration requires the ability to understand and care about others' internal experiences. Without empathy, relationships become purely transactional. What can you do for me? What can I get from you? Watch for this. Do they interrupt your vulnerable moments with their own stories? When you're struggling, do they offer practical help while showing no emotional attunement to your actual feelings? Most revealing, do they engage in competitive suffering? When you share pain, do they immediately trumpet with their own worse experience? This isn't empathy, it's narcissism wearing empathy's mask. But a lack of empathy is just the foundation for something far more sophisticated and dangerous. Control, disguised as care. The most dangerous controllers don't announce themselves with obvious domination. They begin with what appears to be superior wisdom and genuine concern for your well-being. Angela initially seemed like the most supportive mentor I could ask for. She took interest in my career development, offered guidance on difficult decisions, seemed genuinely invested in my success. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, her advice became expectations. Her suggestions became requirements. Her concern became surveillance. "I don't think you should take that job" became, "You're not taking that job, are you?" Became, "I can't believe you're even considering that job after everything we've discussed." My resistance to her input became evidence of poor judgment. My independence became selfishness. My desire for autonomy became ingratitude for all her investment in my development. The insidious nature of this control is that it's always framed as being for your own good. Angela wasn't trying to limit my freedom. She was protecting me from my own poor decision-making. Epictetus, who knew something about the difference between slavery and freedom, taught us, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The controller seeks to make you a slave to their judgment, their preferences, their vision of how your life should unfold. The test is simple. Does this person consistently respect your right to make decisions they disagree with? Can they offer advice and then step back to let you choose your own path? Ask yourself this crucial question. Does this relationship expand my sense of possibility or constrain it? Healthy relationships should make you feel more capable, more confident, more free to become who you're meant to be. Controlling relationships make you smaller, more dependent, more anxious about disappointing someone else's expectations. But emotional predators don't stop at controlling your choices. They have an even more devastating goal, and it requires systematically destroying your connection to everyone else. Part 3. Isolation Tactics. How they cut you off from reality. Once an emotional predator has established control over your inner world, they face a problem. Other people, your family, friends, colleagues, they represent alternative perspectives, sources of support, reality checks that could threaten the predator's influence over you, so they systematically eliminate the competition, turning your world against you. Healthy relationships expand your world. They introduce you to new perspectives, new experiences, new people. Toxic relationships work in the opposite direction. They gradually narrow your world until the toxic person becomes your primary source of connection and validation. This isolation rarely happens through direct demands. Instead, it occurs through a subtle campaign of concern and criticism that slowly erodes your other relationships. Kevin initially seemed thrilled to be part of my social circle. He wanted to meet my family, befriend my colleagues, join my friend groups. But gradually, Kevin began sharing concerns about the people closest to me. My sister was obviously jealous of my success and couldn't be trusted with sensitive information. My best friend was clearly using me and didn't reciprocate the energy I put into the friendship. My parents were too controlling and needed to respect my independence. My colleagues were threatened by my potential and were subtly undermining my advancement. Kevin's observations weren't entirely wrong. All relationships have imperfections. All people have flaws. But Kevin had a remarkable ability to focus exclusively on the negative aspects of my other relationships while positioning himself as the one person who truly understood, supported, and appreciated me. Over time, I found myself sharing less with my sister, seeing my best friend less frequently, calling my parents less often, becoming more guarded at work. Kevin became my primary confidant, my most trusted advisor, my closest companion. It was only when Kevin and I had a major conflict that I realized how isolated I had become. I reached out to my sister, my friend, my parents, my colleagues, and discovered that none of Kevin's concerns were based in reality. These people still cared about me, still wanted to support me, still valued our relationships. But I had pulled away based on Kevin's systematic campaign of division. Marcus Aurelius taught that human beings were born to work together, and that our connections to others are fundamental to our well-being. Those who systematically undermine your other relationships aren't protecting you. They're collecting you. The isolation serves multiple purposes. It makes you more dependent on them for social connection, eliminates outside perspectives that might challenge their influence, and reduces your support system when conflicts arise. But isolation is just the setup for something even more psychologically devastating. Envy disguised as concern. Once they've isolated you from other sources of support and perspective, they can begin the subtle work of diminishing your confidence and joy. This is where disguised envy becomes their most powerful weapon. The most dangerous envious people have learned to disguise their resentment as concern, their criticism as helpfulness, their attempts to diminish you as efforts to protect you from disappointment or arrogance. Maria presented herself as my most supportive colleague and closest work friend. When I received recognition for a project, Maria was quick to congratulate me, but always with a qualifier. "That's wonderful, but I hope you don't let it go to your head." When I was offered new opportunities, she was immediately concerned about whether I was taking on too much, whether I was setting myself up for failure. Maria's support had a consistent pattern: acknowledge the positive development, then immediately introduce doubt designed to diminish my confidence and excitement. She framed this as caring friendship, looking out for me, protecting me from potential disappointment, keeping me grounded in reality. But I began to notice that Maria's concerns only emerged in response to my successes, never my struggles. When I was having difficulties, she was genuinely supportive and encouraging. When things were going well, she became the voice of caution and limitation. The moment of clarity came when I realized that Maria never shared her own good news with the same enthusiasm she expected me to demonstrate about hers. When she succeeded, it was deserved recognition. When I succeeded, it was lucky timing that probably wouldn't last. Seneca captured this perfectly. Envy is the ulcer of the soul. The envious person cannot bear others' good fortune because it serves as a constant reminder of what they feel they lack. The pattern to watch: do their congratulations always come with warnings? Do they seem more comfortable with your struggles than your successes? Do they treat their own achievements differently than yours? Real friends celebrate your successes without qualification. They understand that your achievements don't diminish their worth, that your happiness doesn't threaten their own. But isolation and disguised envy are just preparation for the final stage of psychological warfare. Because once they've cut you off from reality and undermined your confidence, they can reveal their true nature without fear of consequences. Part 4. Moral collapse. When the mask finally comes off, everything we've discussed so far, the reality distortion, the weaponized charm, the effortless lies, the empathy desert, the disguised control, the systematic isolation, the hidden envy, all of it builds toward this final stage. This is where you see their true character, where the careful facade crumbles, where you discover what you've really been dealing with. Blame as high art. Some people have developed blame and deflection into such a refined art that they can turn any criticism into evidence of the critic's unfairness, any consequence into proof of persecution, any problem into someone else's fault. Richard was organizing a major event with me. When deadlines were missed, it was because I hadn't communicated the timeline clearly enough. When vendors fell through, it was because I hadn't vetted them properly. When participants complained about logistics, it was because I had failed to manage expectations. But here's what made Richard's approach so psychologically sophisticated. He never seemed angry or defensive when assigning blame. Instead, he appeared genuinely puzzled by my failures, almost sad that I hadn't lived up to the standards he had reasonably expected. The event was ultimately a disaster, but according to Richard's narrative, it was a disaster that revealed my incompetence rather than his poor judgment. He had been the creative genius held back by practical limitations. I'd been the practical manager who couldn't execute his brilliant vision. What Richard never demonstrated was the ability to acknowledge his role in negative outcomes without qualifications, justifications, or counter-accusations. Every failure became a teaching moment about someone else's inadequacy. Seneca reminds us that truth needs no defense. When someone consistently cannot acknowledge their role in negative outcomes, when they can transform any critique into evidence of the critic's inadequacy, you're dealing with someone who has severed their connection to objective reality in service of protecting their ego. But even sophisticated blame-shifting pales in comparison to what comes next. The hunger for others' pain. There's a German word, Schadenfreude, that captures one of humanity's most disturbing tendencies, pleasure derived from another person's misfortune. We all have moments of this, but some people have turned it into their primary source of emotional nourishment. Patricia had an uncanny ability to be present for others' worst moments. She was always the first to know about divorces, job losses, health scares, family problems. Initially, I thought this was compassion. Patricia seemed so concerned about everyone's well-being, so available during crises. But gradually, I began to notice a subtle gleam in her eyes when she delivered bad news about mutual friends, barely suppressed excitement when someone's life fell apart, curious disappointment when stories had happy endings. Patricia wasn't drawn to others' pain out of empathy, she was drawn to it out of hunger. The most chilling moment came when I watched her react to news that a colleague had been promoted. Her face fell, not with disappointment about missing her own opportunity, but with genuine distress that something good had happened to someone else. Those who derive pleasure from others' pain reveal their own profound emptiness. They cannot bear others' success because it highlights their own failures. They need others to fall because it makes them feel elevated by comparison. Watch for this. Do they seem unusually interested in others' disasters? Do they have a remarkable ability to find the negative angle in positive news? Do they seem more animated when discussing failures than successes? But there's one final sign that reveals the complete moral collapse of a person's character. The heart that cannot change. Of all the signs we've discussed, this may be the most definitive. The complete inability to acknowledge wrongdoing, express genuine remorse, or demonstrate meaningful change in response to causing harm. Robert left a trail of damaged relationships wherever he went. When he betrayed a friend's confidence and cost them a job opportunity, Robert was hurt that anyone would question his motives. He had been trying to help by sharing relevant information. When he lied to his romantic partner about his financial situation and left her responsible for debts she didn't know existed, Robert was disappointed that she couldn't understand the pressure he'd been under. In each case, Robert's response followed the same pattern: initial denial that any real harm had occurred, followed by elaborate explanations that justified his actions, followed by hurt bewilderment that others couldn't see his good intentions, followed by anger at their unfairness in holding him accountable. What Robert never demonstrated was genuine remorse, the kind of deep regret that comes from truly understanding your impact on another person. He never showed authentic accountability, acknowledging wrongdoing without qualifications. Most tellingly, he never showed meaningful change. His apologies were always followed by repetitions of the same harmful patterns. Marcus Aurelius taught us, don't debate what a good person should be one. The unrepentant heart is revealed not through dramatic confrontations, but through the consistent pattern of causing harm without genuine accountability or meaningful change. This matters because relationships require the ability to acknowledge harm and make repairs. We all hurt each other occasionally through carelessness, selfishness, or simple human limitation. The difference between healthy and toxic people lies not in whether they cause harm, but in how they respond when they do. Without the capacity for genuine remorse, authentic responsibility, and meaningful change, you cannot have a real relationship with someone. You can only manage their defensive systems designed to protect their ego at any cost. Conclusion: your light in their darkness. We've traveled through dark territory together, examining the sophisticated ways that evil manifests in human relationships. These aren't the obvious villains of movies and novels, but everyday predators who use psychological sophistication to cause real harm while maintaining plausible deniability. From the invisible warfare that attacks your perception of reality, to the emotional predators who exploit your capacity for connection, to the isolation tactics that cut you off from support, to the moral collapse that reveals their true nature, we've mapped the complete progression of how these people operate. But here's what I want you to understand above all else. Recognizing these patterns isn't about becoming cynical, paranoid, or closed off to human connection. It's about developing the discernment that allows you to invest your precious energy in relationships that nourish rather than deplete, that expand rather than constrain, that celebrate your light rather than seeking to dim it. The Stoics understood that awareness is the foundation of freedom. You cannot protect yourself from dangers you cannot see, cannot avoid traps you cannot recognize, cannot make wise choices about relationships without understanding the full spectrum of human behavior. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The people we've discussed today represent outside events you must navigate, but they have no power over your fundamental well-being unless you grant it to them. Your awareness is your armor, your boundaries are your castle walls, your values are your North Star. Your inner peace belongs to you, regardless of the chaos others might try to create around you. Remember that person who drained your energy at the beginning of this video. Now you know exactly what happened. Now you can see the patterns, understand the tactics, and most importantly, protect yourself from them. The signs we've explored are real, but so is your capacity to recognize them and choose relationships that honor your worth. You don't have to fix broken people, explain yourself to unreasonable people, or dim your light to make comfortable those who prefer darkness. Evil is subtle, but it's not invisible, not when you know what to look for. Manipulation is powerful, but it loses its power when you understand its mechanisms. Toxic people are skilled, but their skills become useless against someone who sees clearly and chooses wisely. Surround yourself with people who celebrate your successes, support your struggles, respect your boundaries, take responsibility for their actions, and want to see you become the fullest version of yourself. These people exist, they are worth waiting for, and they deserve the gift of your authentic self. Your light, your authenticity, your kindness, your strength, your growth, your joy is the very thing that those with dark hearts fear most. So don't dim it to make them comfortable. Let it shine so brightly that it illuminates the path for others who are still learning to see in the dark. Your light is the very thing they fear most, so don't dim it to make them comfortable.